Imagine what it would be like if executive assistants weren't just for C-level people, but even your interns have an executive assistant. Not only will your intern have it, but it'll outperform the C-level person's real-life executive assistant in the near future. This is already able to do stuff with higher quality than team members.
I mean, this is mind-blowing. Nick, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Aiden.
It's super excited to do this. One of the really cool things about the work that you do, Nick, is that you're constantly working with super innovative founders, super innovative companies, and then you're helping them innovate and now innovate with AI. But, before we dig in, I'd love for you to just tell us quickly, like a little bit about your background, how you got into the world that you're in today, and like, what does your company do?
First of all, thanks for having me. My entrepreneurial/career journey, I started off I'm a financial engineer actually by background. So I was a high frequency trader on Wall Street for 8 years. So, I've been thinking about automation. I've been doing machine learning and AI for 20 years, basically from grad school to that. And then when I got out, I started getting into entrepreneurship, and I became really obsessed with, what's the most efficient way to run a company. And so my main company, I have a few. One is Leverage, and that's a operational efficiency training and consulting company. And so before even this boom on the AI side, what I noticed was there's all these new ways of working and all these tools. There's Slack, there's Asana, there's Fellow, there's Zapier. How do you bring it all together and have a strategy that's cohesive and everyone's maximizing the use of these tools and they understand the purpose and best practices? So I noticed a gap in knowledge with those things. And there's a lot of companies that have been around for many, many, many years that have historically done really well and figured out, some product or service that works and they've got customers, but they really didn't pay much attention to, how do you keep up in this modern world and leverage all these fantastic tools that if you properly use, it can fundamentally change how you operate. So I became really obsessed with not just individual productivity, but how do teams and organizations be productive? And then I wrote a book called Come Up for Air, which talks about my framework.
Yeah, it was a bestseller too, right? Like it did really well.
Oh, thank you. It was not New York Times, but I was fortunate to get Wall Street Journal bestseller. So the book's done well. And, now, we work with a lot of businesses. AI is obviously a big part of it. And, we're starting to build AI agents and tools that support a lot of philosophies and frameworks and best practices that go along with the book. One of the biggest issues in business is email. Every business uses Outlook or Gmail pretty much. And sometimes it's 10 or 20 hours a week people spend in email and they've just never been taught best practices. So one of the key things that we teach at Leverage, as dry as this sounds, is how do you get to inbox zero? And we have a framework called RAD. You can read about it. And it's one of the quickest wins that companies can do. But taking it a step further, we're building an agent to just help automate that process. And it takes into account a whole bunch of different factors, and it's able to organize, categorize, and draft emails way better than what you would see in some of the native solutions, because we're just looking at so much more robust data to craft a good email. And then there's a whole bunch of other agents too that go along with the book.
I'm super curious to dig in. And so we're going to dig into that stuff as well. But I thought maybe a good place for us to start is just to jump straight into demo. You have something really cool to show us. And then we're going to talk about implications. And then we're going to talk about agents and what kind of agents you help people deploy and everything else. This is Claude. So is this your go-to AI? Maybe like, what do you use most of the time? Is this your go-to?
I'm using Claude a lot. My typical philosophy with these things, whichever one you want to use, you just have to make sure that you're using it right. I've got preferences with work management tools. We promote Asana a lot. If someone wants to use Monday, they could be totally successful with Monday. So there's personal preference. As of today, in June 2025, I'm liking Claude, but this stuff changes so fast. Maybe next month, OpenAI comes out with some updates and now that one's better. So at the end of the day, I'm not getting married to any of them. I like Claude right now because on the desktop, you can set up what's called MCP servers. And that was what I was going to demo for you right now, if you want.
Yeah, let's do it.
I really think MCP, it's something that I think most people aren't even aware of. stands for Model Context Protocol. Essentially, it allows you to extend your internal knowledge and integrate it into one of these platforms. And then it could start answering questions, accessing data, but then also performing things with agents all through the one interface. When you go to any of these platforms, you're just getting access to the general LLM, the general knowledge that it's got. But once you start integrating it with your stuff, the sky's the limit with how much more valuable these things can be. Even starting to think, what's the future of documenting knowledge? And honestly, like we promote Coda a lot, or Notion's another popular one. But I really think that, a lot of the future of knowledge is going to be, I think you always want a knowledge base, but rather than going and reading 20 steps in some SOP in a knowledge base, you can make it a lot more dynamic and interactive and actionable, and take all that knowledge, but stick it into something like Claude or custom GPT. And now the knowledge is not just stored there, but you can start asking it questions and it can start performing actions, right? And so I think that the future of knowledge capture is really going to be in these tools as well. Let me just show you an example of what I mean with MCP. My framework is called the CPR framework. That's what my book is all about. So you could see here, Claude's got these things natively integrated. And then I've set up Asana separately. There's a little bit of technical stuff. And then I've set up my own agent, the CPR agent. What CPR stands for is Communicate, Plan, Resource. That's the main framework in my book. And so this agent has tools, and it has access to tools and its own sub-agents. So agents is a buzzword. Basically, an agent, you code it some rules. Think of it like a person. Like you tell a person, like, hey, you're responsible for these things, and then it has to go and figure out how to do it. So at the top, you have what's called an orchestrator agent. And in that case, it's this executive assistant agent. So that agent is programmed with certain context, certain rules, but then also the ability to access other agents. So it's kind of like a manager, right? And so this is the manager, and it's going to oversee other agents. So it might determine, oh, hey, we have to go to email. So it might hit this one. Or, oh, this is something related to tasks and projects. We use Asana, so maybe it has to go here. Or, hey, maybe it's related to a person. Let's go and look them up in the CRM, right? So by connecting and setting up this one thing here, it's extended access to knowledge as well as functionality in all the different core tools that I use at the company. Make sense? Right? So I've got my knowledge base here. I've got a whole bunch of stuff. So
it's interesting. So through MCP, which is, again, it's a protocol. So it's a way to talk to another system. And it makes it easy for LLMs to communicate with another system. So through the MCP protocol, you've created a way to access all these agents that you've programmed. So if someone is working, I guess, with you, your clients, they basically have access to this agent.
Yeah, right now I'm just doing this internally, but the idea is this is going to start we're going to have a suite of these agents, and then we'll work with companies because there's some customization. Different people have different tools, different needs, et cetera. So what the idea is, we'll go with a company, we'll set up some data pipeline stuff, some customization, but now they have the executive. Imagine what it would be like if executive assistants, for example, weren't just for C-level people, but everyone from the bottom up, even your interns have an executive assistant. That's the future of these things. And like, maybe they're going to have like 50 agents like an executive assistant that they all have access to, and it's going to like 10x their productivity.
I mean, this is mind-blowing, right? Like this idea that every single person, even your interns, can have an executive assistant.
It can already happen. And honestly, it can do a better job than like your human executive. Not only will your intern have it, but it'll outperform the C-level person's, real life executive assistant in the near future. Like this is already able to do stuff, with higher quality than team members.
The other thing, which I think is pretty mind-blowing, is that it's really cool that, we've talked about agents before, but I love this idea of agent orchestration and how, in this case, you even have a manager agent that decides which one of the other agents should perform tasks.
Totally. So CPR is at the top, underneath CPR, you have like a communications agent, a planning agent, and a resources agent. So the CPR one figures out what to do there. And then within communication, there's like There's sub things even within communication, right? Is it internal, external, personal? There's a whole bunch, there's like layers, just like an org chart. You've got a C-level person, and then underneath that, maybe a VP or a manager, and then underneath that, regular employees, and you have like this hierarchy. You have the same idea with agents, right? And just like a human, you have to check the work, and if you notice that it produced a result you didn't like, you have to go back to what were the set of rules and instructions and what was not clear. And it's just the future role of a lot of people at every level of any role is going to be doing QA, quality assurance on the agents. And when they find something that bugged out, either fixing it themselves or reporting the bug. And I think a big responsibility for every single person in every company is going to be QA.
And by the way, this is not all that different from being a manager of a team, right? Part of the thing is you own the work that your team produces, you raise the bar. And what I like about it is it's almost when something doesn't go right, you don't blame the agent, you blame you because you didn't do a good job of explaining it in a way or creating the rules in a way that it would produce the right outcome.
Totally. In general, senior people are laggards for new technologies compared to lower level people. Like a CEO or a CFO at a traditional, 8-figure type of company, they're usually the last people to use Asana or Coda or some of these tools for the most part. What's interesting right now with AI is it's actually the complete opposite, and actually senior people more than twice as likely to adopt AI than lower level people. Want to take a guess why?
Well, I guess like they're used to delegating. I mean, this is the thing that they do.
They already think in terms of delegation, and that's a skill in itself. And I think that that's going to start becoming one of the most important skills for people to learn is not how to use these tools, but like just how to be a delegator and think about delegation.
It's definitely a new world we're entering. So what you have here on the screen is it says, tell me about Aiden.
So if I hit this right now, so I'm showing you an example of MCP, but the agents that we've built behind the scenes here, they're utilized here in this MCP, but then they're also utilized with other triggers. So like I call this a trigger, right? Like I'm going to write a message here inside of Claude that's going to trigger my agent, but you could trigger the agent from a type form. It could trigger right now when I get a new email, that's triggering an automation to run through and, categorize and draft email. So like I've automated my email right now and it's producing draft emails way better than, you're going to get out of like Gemini or Copilot. And I can explain why that is. But part of the reason why is what you're going to see here. So part of the reason why it's producing better results is because it's not just trying to write you an email, making sure that it's formal and concise and stuff. It's looking at a really, really robust set of data on you. And it's taking into account emails that you've had with my team, past meetings, stuff from the CRM, all this stuff that you're not going to get in a lot of these other tools. It's just going to help you kind of do some general cleanup, but it's not going to have the context. And I feel like really to solve this problem, you need all the context for it
This
to
is
really
why we
add
keep
value.
saying context is king. This is like the new phrase for this era.
So you need the context. So, imagine a world where you can kind of almost do everything from this one portal, right? Imagine all of these agents behind the scenes that are running and getting triggered from a new email, a new calendar event. Every morning we have one that scans your calendar, sees all the upcoming meetings and gives you like an executive brief on, each person, right? That's something that only CEOs usually get.
I'm super curious to see what happens.
So here, it's going to be smart enough to figure out what agent to even call. So you notice there, it knows, I don't have to even tell it, go to my CRM. It just knows, right? Now it's going to look up information on you. So let's see what it finds. All right. So then it finds all this information on you, right?
So all this stuff was in your CRM?
It's ultimately in the CRM, but then we have another agent that's going out and looking at your LinkedIn, looking at news and in what's going on in news. We use Perplexity for that part. Then it's looking at all of our emails together, all the emails with my team, all the data that we've got on the CRM.
And this is great, by the way. Like this is literally my background. It even has the This New Way podcast, which we're recording right now.
Right.
And even talks to you about like, how we connected.
If I want to even go more granular, right? So if I were to ask it right now, write Aiden an email, about whatever, it's got all this context. So it's not just going to write you a concise formal email. It can reference details that might increase the quality of the email and personalize it a lot more.
I mean, this to me is crazy because this is literally what you would typically do in working with someone who's managing your email. And like you said, it was a privilege previously only for C-level folks at the company. But this idea that it can go back, research all the history, look at the CRM, like do all these things, and then create the most perfect thing that you want. And I bet like if you wanted to, you could record a voice memo to say, hey, I want to send an Aiden a note to congratulate him on something. Can you like go write something super comprehensive? And it can take that, probably put it in your voice, look up all the relevant context. I mean, this is super powerful stuff.
Totally. Look, and then like, what's the most recent emails, right? And then it also identifies patterns. Like, are we getting closer, not closer? Is there friction? So it's got a whole bunch of stuff here, right?
Yeah, it's kind of pointing out that we were trying to schedule this for a while.
Yeah, I know. This is but here we are. We did it.
Nick, this is really like pretty mind-blowing stuff.
Thanks. Yeah, and like a lot of these agents, they either directly interact with each other or indirectly interact with each other, right? So like we have one that we call Sniper. And so when you email, if you write an email or in the morning when if we want to do like the executive brief, the Sniper agent is creating a like 360 overview on you. And then that overview is utilized for many other agents, right? So it's going to be utilized for the morning briefing agent, but then it's also going to be utilized for the email. So by me writing in Claude in that MCP, it produced a summary card for you. Then that summary card is then used in other things, right? So if I really wanted to kind of go deeper, like I would have looked at this morning, and then like, who have you talked to? Like, what are we talking about? Are we in what context? Are you a potential prospect? Are we trying to get you to become a client of some sorts? Or, is there some type of partnership? Like, what's the context here? Because that matters for what I need to know going into the call or how I'm going to email you.
I mean, this is great. Like you said, it outperforms humans because it's almost like the amount of work that it does. And I mean, that card looks amazing. So maybe you would have even your EA create something like that, but they would do it if you were just about to meet, who knows, the president of a country, right? Like it would have to be a big deal to spend that much time. But now you can have that for everybody.
And my team has access to it, right? So if, you need to do a call with Jessica, she sees a contact card, right? And if she needs to write you an email, it has context of that. It has context of, and again, there's privacy that you need to take into account too. So it's only going to help Jessica write an email with data that she has access to. So if I'm sharing all of my emails, syncing it with HubSpot, like she can see it anyway. So that means the agent for her can see it.
This is amazing. And, just the concept, like this kind of stuff was impossible before. And now you're showing that everybody can have access to it. What's crazy is like even this idea that you can have your email auto-parsed in advance. The drafts can be based on like all the other context that exists in your company. I mean, this kind of world, it sounds very futuristic, but it's here. Like you're doing this stuff, like you're doing this with clients.
The devil's in the details with a lot of these things, right? Because you could spend an hour and set up something to automate or, draft an email, but every micro optimization or edge case, right? Some emails contain like weird links in it, right? Or maybe there's an attachment in the email, or maybe there's like a link to a Google Doc or a link to some website. And so you have to be able to, if there's a Loom video, transcribe it and understand the context. If there's a document, read the document. If there's a website. So you have to do all that. Then you also have to be mindful, what model is best used for different use cases. So one of the little nuances too is like we have agents whose job it is to select what the best model is for the other agents to do. So it's dynamic. I believe that people are going to start really realizing that prompts are a form of intellectual property. And just like you have assets and IP, it's not just going to be trademarks and patents. It's going to be your workflows and your prompts and things like that. So there's best practices that we're kind of figuring out and defining. For example, all of our prompts are stored in a database, and then that database is ultimately what's referenced within our agents. And what that does is we can see a history of every change. We can do machine learning to optimize our prompts. Like you don't want something I speak about when I do a keynote is you want to challenge status quo with your SOPs and processes. And what I absolutely hate is when you ask someone, why do you do something the way it's done? And they just, oh, it's the way that we've always done it. You want to, be always rethinking, is it still smart to do this? Oftentimes it's just, no one's ever thought to look at something. And it's the same with prompts. If you come up with a prompt today, if you don't reevaluate and tweak and optimize, that's foolish. And so you want to have a prompt optimization strategy. And if you start putting it into databases, you could see history, better kind of A/B test and see the results. Also, if you want to protect the IP and not have everyone be able to tweak or touch, it does give you that extra layer of protection, but it really makes it a lot more of an asset. Then you invest as a company in a really good prompt for how to categorize an email or how to build this contact card. And you're not having other people reinvent the wheel or potentially start diverging and having different prompts. You really invest one time and it's stored somewhere.
I think about just even situations like how this stuff can get really real time. So, you have a conversation, say that a competitor comes up on a sales call, and immediately you have, a request go to product marketing or your product marketing agent. And like that can kick off, a workflow and then update like a battle card with the latest information about, this stuff is going to be fast. It's going to be real time. All the workflows that make sense are just going to happen with these agents. And they're going to be very specific and be really good at the one outcome, I would say, that they're trying to produce.
Again, the devil's in the details. Like you want to be mindful of what you're feeding into these things. So sometimes you want to be thinking about kind of like pre-layers to things. So you're not just necessarily uploading the entire transcript of a call, but you have like a pre-process that, like a fellow or one of those types of tools will understand it's a sales call. So this is exactly what we're looking for in a sales call. And it's not just a general summary, right? Because if you upload a transcript to one of these tools and say, summarize it, you're just going to get a general summary, but you might have a certain style and certain key elements that you want to extract from sales calls. So you have your own framework for a sales call. It could even determine, was this a sales call, a biz dev call, an internal call? Maybe there's different things you want to strip out, but you need to define that. And then you get the summary, but it's not the general summary. It's your unique custom summary. And then that's fed back into the CRM or the agent so that you're not kind of just drowning it in gigabytes and gigabytes of crap, but you're helping it to be more focused on just important data to make the best recommendation or produce the best result.
And just like you would with a human, right? So you want to give them like focus information. And even if you had like this super powerful EA or chief of staff, if they were going to brief you on a meeting, they would tell you what you needed to know, right? They wouldn't tell you all the things that you already knew and waste your time. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff happen, but here's what you need to pay attention to. And you're right, like the intellectual property is in these prompts. And it's really important to iterate on them. I think when the reasoning models first came out, it kind of changed the way that you needed to prompt, and they're constantly changing. Nick, I was just going to ask you very quickly about what goes on in the background with these agents. Like, how does one go about building them?
There's a lot of different platforms. It's a moving target. Like right now, we're doing a lot of stuff in N8N, which is like a Zapier competitor. It's quite technical. So the average company, it's probably not going to be a fit to try to go and learn that. You probably want to hire someone for that. There's a bunch of different platforms where you could do it. I think, if you want to long term, like once we start giving this or selling this to clients and integrating this, the strategy is going to be different. It's going to have to be custom code and like a standalone web application that we build for more, prime time enterprise level. But for prototyping or purely internal, we're using N8N. You got Crew AI. There's a whole bunch of them.
I know we're running up against time. So this was a really cool demo. If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
Well, on LinkedIn, you can look me up. And I'm sure in the show notes you can put it. But I'm Nick Sonnenberg or Nicholas Sonnenberg on LinkedIn. I think it's Nick Sonnenberg. My book is Come Up for Air. So comeupforair.com if you want to check the book out. And The training and consulting company is getleverage.com. So you should be able to find me from any of those. Oh, and I have a podcast, theoptimizepodcast.com. So if you're interested in efficiency, take a look at some of those.
This is amazing. Nick, thanks so much for doing this. Glad we finally had a chance to make it happen. And till next time.
Thanks for having me.
And that's it for today. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of This New Way. If you like the content, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe so you can get notified when we post the next episode. See you next time.